Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan. Welcome to my live stream. It's May 7th, 2025. Welcome, welcome. Wow, wow. I am pleased to say that my audience on Instagram keeps getting bigger. Thanks. I think we have 131,000 people on Instagram now. And if you're on Instagram but haven't, followed me and linked with me, we're putting up a lot more things there. And we're also working on developing my YouTube channel to develop much more content there. This week we have on the podcast Dr. Stephen Kent, who is an emeritus sociologist from the University of known for decades in guy with frozen for memories. I'll keep talking. So Steve Kent has doing expert witness things for many years, and I should also say on the offer, and we have who the equity sharing a problem with blushing. Hello. Can anybody hear me and my team? Please let me know if you can, and I will continue.
You're fine now. Keep going.
Is that? I am fine now. Good. Sorry, we had some technical glitches. In any case, it is May 7th, and there's so many stories to comment on. Where to begin? I guess I can comment on Carney's visit to Trump at the White House, and note that Carney first went to Europe as opposed to coming to the US first, which was always the tradition, which says volumes. And Carney was very funny in his post-Trump meeting interview when a reporter said she was looking at his face as Trump was talking about making Canada one of America's 51st states. That was kind of amusing. Carney impresses me as a grown-up who understands how to behave like a world leader, something Donald Trump has yet to learn. We're still suffering the decline of the dollar since Trump took office and was blaming Biden. It was completely because of Trump's ridiculous, stupid tariff ideas and threats and support for Putin's talking points. And so we can go into that if you want, but there's so many other things to comment on, like the cryptocurrency emoluments problem, with how foreign actors and criminals can give money directly to Trump and his family by using crypto, and Trump's comment that he wants to make America the crypto capital of the world. For those of you who have been following me, you know that I'm very negative on crypto that isn't government regulated, and I'm very worried about the future of our country with the unqualified people Trump has put in place who've signed the loyalty pledge to him as opposed to the Constitution or checks and balances. And this, there was just recently a leak, intelligence leak that about the deportees to El Salvador that Tulsi Gabbard, who is involved, has historically been involved with the Science of Identity cult of Chris Butler, which was a spin-off or splinter group of the Krishna cult, actually knew that the Venezuelan government and the gang that supposedly these men were in weren't in. So many things to talk about, really. I'm definitely up for taking your questions. I can tell you that I am still so happy always to see comedians like John Oliver, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, uh, educating the public through humor about how absurd and destructive this Trump GOP has been. And all I can say is that there are more and more people leaving the belief that Trump was a great president. Many who've been fired are vets, which is having a very, I think, sobering effect on those who are still in the military to realize that they swore an oath to the Constitution and not to bend the knee to a king, which Donald Trump wants to be. Oh, he wants to be Pope too, and he did share that AI image of him in the vestments of Pope Francis. Um, the conclave starts today to determine the next pope. And I've seen Steve Bannon's messaging that the MAGA Catholics think this Francis was satanic and evil, and they want to put an Opus Dei traditionalist, so-called traditionalist in power that aligns with the autocratic notions of that go back to men being in charge of the family and women bearing children, getting rid of gay rights and women's right to choose healthcare over their bodies. There's so much going on, folks, and I can opine on and on. I can just say that I'm more aware than ever that my expertise is a missing vital ingredient for going forward, because we're dealing with levels of information warfare that are unprecedented, and with the hack by Musk and Doge of our personal data shared with Russia, we need to be more careful and use Signal, an encrypted app to call and to text. I see we have Time Lord says, "Hi, Dr. Hassan. I put the link to the bite model in my Instagram link. So that way, if any of my still PME JW friends can read it, if they want, most of them don't. No, I left. Keep up the good work. I thank you." PME means physically in, mentally in, as opposed to PMO, which is physically in, mentally out, and just trying to figure out an exit ramp to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I plan on doing a video after this live stream, actually. Someone on my team asked me to do a video to advise people what to say when they're on the street and they see two JWs on a corner. What are their choices and what can they say or do? So I'll be doing a video. We'll be putting that out. And we'll be putting out a video of a Latina woman who was a big Trump supporter, was on stage with Trump saying how much she loves him, and then saying how she feels betrayed because she was told by the Trump officials that they would not be going after documented Latinos. Surprise, he's a liar. Everyone who follows Trump needs to lie. Oh, and by the way, Oklahoma, I believe, in the school system is now being told to officially say that Trump won the 2020 election. So we have an alternate reality known as a cult reality. Tam Jules, Hare Krishna documentary was eye-opening how these cults get so power-hungry and controlling. Yes, I interviewed Nori Muster, and there's a link on my Substack interview and my podcast interview to a very good doc called Monkey on a Stick that I highly recommend. I'm not sure if it's streaming or not, but check it out. If it's not streaming, we can lobby to try to get it streaming. I interviewed a very interesting woman who was in the Rajneesh cult who wrote a memoir, Sarito Carroll. So that's coming on my podcast and Substack. But for those of you who've watched the Wild Wild Country docuseries on the Rajneesh cult, it was like so bad from my perspective and hers, because it featured two true believers in Rajneesh and Osho, had no ex-members, no cult experts, nothing about brainwashing and mind control. And that's my big beef about so many documentaries, that the public is not getting educated as they're getting entertained. And a lot of, we refer to this as trauma porn, where people are sharing, bearing their souls on how they were abused and sexually abused, etc., in cults, but not giving the public any real information that can help them apply what they're learning to their real life. And we have in the cult of Trump so many destructive cults. I said to my friend Joe Zimhart, who I'm on a Signal thread with, let's make a list of all the cults that are in the cult of Trump. When I wrote the book originally in 2019, I think I put about 10 or 11 names of cults, but there are so many more that we're going to be adding. And thanks, Hallie, on TikTok for a gift. Thank you for those who are wishing to help support us. Honestly, I'm really wanting to spend more time writing. I have to get back to my guidebook on how to talk to family and friends in MAGA and on the authoritarian left as well. I want to do less individual consultations and develop more courses and material to help more people. So that's the goal, and asking for the public's help. I know that you get asked by a billion different experts for support, but our freedom of mind work is very specialized to apply knowledge about cult brainwashing and mind control to educate the public as a public health crisis. So think about that. Steve Harkin, are the conservative Catholics a majority of Catholics? Uh, I don't know is the answer. I can make a distinction between the MAGA Catholics, the Opus Dei Catholics, the ones who think Pope Francis was evil, the ones who want a pope to go back to the Latin Mass and to get rid of all this crazy, stupid things like being concerned about global warming or immigrant justice, helping the poor and the sick and the needy, which is Jesus's message, that if you're helping these populations, you're serving him, and don't be deceived by false prophets and evil one. I can say that the whole words need to get clearly defined. And if we let the authoritarians define it for us and we're using their wording, then we're one down and we're reactive. So I really encourage people. I say it's your mind and only you should control it. And we're experiencing this AI boom at the moment where every major platform, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Facebook, is wanting us to be using AI, and it's gathering training data on us unless we explicitly opt out. And it's getting harder and harder to opt out of this surveillance capitalism model that we're in. Let's see, Niraj Joshi, could you comment on these new Christian counseling services? They seem akin to life coaches. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but um, coaching is become very, very popular. A lot of mental health professionals who've done their graduate work, supervision, etc., many are going into coaching because there's less of a stigma to say for people to say I'm seeing a therapist or I'm seeing a counselor. It sounds better to say I'm seeing a life coach. The problem is most life coaches are not qualified to do mental health coaching and counseling. And so I tell people always be a good consumer and investigate. Always you can get a second or third opinion. But really don't just pick somebody who has a printed document saying they have a diploma, and especially be nervous about anyone who's just advertising their services as trained in NLP and they have no mental health training or background at all. I'm very nervous that while many of these folks may be well-intentioned, that they just don't know that they could be doing grave harm. To that end, I want to just mention we have a online continuing ed course for psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and counselors. We have a brand new workbook that's over my shoulder, Understanding Cults, with links to Substacks and other resources. So if you're interested in learning more about this topic, doing a deeper dive, check out that workbook. Let's see, Tim Jones, 89. What do you make of Trump saying he doesn't know how to give people due process because it takes too long? Isn't that basic constitutional right? Yes, Tim. I think it's the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says everyone is entitled to due process. And Trump made a pledge to deport 1 million plus people and has now been told it's impossible, even though everyone knew it was impossible when he made that claim. And he's saying it would take years for people before a judge to have due process, and he doesn't have that time. So this is one of the most worrying comments that Donald Trump has said, that and ignoring the 9-0 Supreme Court decision telling him to facilitate the return of the man who was wrongly deported to El Salvador. And Trump has not obeyed the Supreme Court and has done a linguistic manipulation saying that he can't tell another government to return a person, when the reality is we're paying El Salvador to imprison American deportees, and it would be as simple as telling them to put him on a plane and he would be back in honoring the Supreme Court. So we have a guy in power, wants to be king, wants to rule, has made people swear an oath of loyalty. And I see two fissures that need to be developed and amplified. One is all of the Trump supporters who are now angry, upset about being fired, about farmers losing their USAID subsidies, about rule of law being ignored. We need to welcome these folks and mobilize and amplify their messaging to existing Republican congressmen and senators. And we need them to not bend the knee and swear loyalty to Trump and the GOP and do the right thing. And to that end, we should be lobbying their family, their friends, their former law partners, if they were lawyers, to do the right thing, because history is watching. And that's one big thing that needs to happen on a much bigger scale, along with street protests. The other thing that needs to happen is we should be reaching out to family and friends who are in the military and ask them if they were told to shoot fellow Americans who are peacefully protesting in the streets, would they obey that order or not? Or would they follow the Constitution? Because, as you know, Hegseth, who is uniquely unqualified to head the Defense Department, has fired all the inspector generals who were the judges who could have ruled for the military to say it's an improper order. But we need the existing military system to stay the course and stand up to bully Trump, even at the risk of being fired. And unfortunately, I read this morning the Supreme Court supports the ban of trans people in the military, which is, in my opinion, a step backward from the progress that we've made for human rights. Let's see, Lefty Crochetco, do you have any plans to write a book for ex-Mormons? I don't have plans to write a book for ex-Mormons, but I'm very interested in doing much more writing and teaching and courses. If you haven't listened to my course with John Dehlin that we taught together when I was in Salt Lake City a couple of years ago, you can find the link on freedomofmind.com. And I must say, former Mormons and former Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're American formed cults and have been around since the 1800s, there are millions of ex-members, and they're amongst my most robust supporters, because people read Combating Cult Mind Control thinking they would learn about the Moonies, and they're reading about basically applying everything, including the bite model, to their group. If you, and I want to get John Dehlin back on my podcast. I'd love to do more work with him and Mormon Stories podcast. And I recently reached out to him saying, hey, update the links, because you're linking people to the out-of-date 1990 or 1988 edition of Combating and not the updated one post-internet. Let's see. I'm not sure I'm going to butcher your name, so I won't say it. Hi, Dr. Hassan, therapist here. I watched your post around the definition of brainwashing, and it got me thinking about the dynamic of brainwashing and cult leadership. It strikes me as similar to the dynamic of an abusive relationship, learned helplessness, isolation. What are your thoughts on approaching Trump supporters as victims in this vein? Yes, yes, and yes. Welcome to Freedom of Mind and my model, which includes the influence continuum, which is on Freedom of Mind, and you can download for free. Ethical to unethical, and the bite model is over here. It applies to a one-on-one relationship. It can be a political cult, a therapy cult, a religious cult, a commercial cult, including trafficking or multi-level marketing cults. Why? Because it looks at behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions, and basically says if you're manipulating these four components that interlace, and to create a new identity that's dependent and obedient, that subverts a person's conscience and ability to think for themselves. You're talking about brainwashing and mind control. And yes, please read my books. Combating Freedom of Mind is my book on how to help people to reality test to get out of cults, and The Cult of Trump. And chapter 9 of the Cult of Trump book is on how to help reach people who have been brainwashed into the cult of Trump. And lastly, before I answer Tam's question, I'll just say that no, I don't think everyone who voted for Trump is in a mind control cult. However, I can say as of May 7th, 2025, if you believe that Trump won the 2020 election or that January 6th was not a violent attempt to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, if you believe those two things, in May 7th, 2025, then you are in the cult of Trump, because both have been overwhelmingly factually disproved. And that's what all of the politicians in the GOP have sworn to never criticize in the current administration in order to have their power and position. Now back to Tam. Can you make suggestions to the people leaving the cults as a path to freedom, starting with psychotherapy if necessary? What steps should they follow to make a clean break from mind control? Absolutely, and thank you for your question. So there are two primary populations that I've worked with in the last 49 years that I've been active coaching and counseling folks. People born or raised in cults, or people who were recruited later in life, like I was at age 19 into the Moonies, because I had an identity beforehand. I had a family that I could come back to, and friends, and career goals. So there were two different aspects. It's often a lot harder for people exiting groups they were born into or raised into, because their family and friends are typically still in, and they were raised with the notion that the world's coming to an end, and phobia indoctrination that if they leave, terrible things are going to happen to them. In the Moonies, I was taught to believe demons would possess me, a la Exorcist movie, even though I was raised Jewish and didn't believe in demons, and don't still. But I had these irrational fears that short-circuited my critical thinking ability. Whenever you're involved with a group, I always recommend creating an exit strategy, and that includes building relationships or rekindling relationships with people outside the group. It's become increasingly difficult in this digitized age where people have cell phones, because the group is constantly texting, messaging, knowing your location and such. So there needs to be a thoughtful exit strategy. And many people have just literally gone into libraries and started reading Combating Cult Mind Control, learning about the influence continuum, the bite model, understanding about phobias, reaching out to, well-defined former members and experts. And when people are leaving, there are two primary motivational strategies: either moving towards a positive or moving away from a negative. And a lot of people leave cults because they just can't stand being in it anymore. Many who have had children, and they don't want to subject their children to what they had to grow up with. And so the idea here is that one needs to learn, if you were born or raised in a cult, what's normal and what's healthy. if you weren't corporally beaten? Like, what would it be like to develop a healthy sense of self? And you're not alone. That's the good thing about 2025, is there are communities of former members, and this is one of the values of being online, is to know that you're not alone, and you can get your questions and answered. Right now, I'm looking into ways that I can help more people in a cost-efficient manner, where more people who can't afford to do individual consultations with me can get assistance. And all I can think of is to do live streams, to do courses, to videotape them, and at least a lot of this information can be transmitted. That was a long answer. Let's move on. K Clock. Catholic Charities has been defunded by Trump for their refugee resettlement work. I didn't know that, and I'm not totally surprised. Judge Hannah Dugan, recently arrested in Milwaukee, previously led local Catholic Charities. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing this. You know, ethical religions have a duty to serve the community, not just serve their own members. But I'm of the Abrahamic school of faith for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, where Abraham had his tent open on all four sides, where if someone was hungry or thirsty, you gave them food or drink because it's the right thing to do. And all I can say is that we have an autocrat who wants to use religious freedom as a tool to take totalitarian fascist control and impose his own the people who are paying him and controlling him, impose their will on everybody else. Thanks, Angie, for gifts on TikTok. I've said in the past I have mixed feelings about TikTok because China owns TikTok and they're gathering information on all of us from TikTok. But my social media people are like, Steve, you got to be on TikTok. And I know there were millions of references to the bite model on TikTok. So currently being represented on TikTok. So thanks for that. But we're going to need to build some safe social media platforms with rules and ethics and fact checking. I see Missouri Mystical Cannabis Super Chat $10. And thanks, Dr. Hassan. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I was on Lev Parnas's Substack Live last week, and I listened and learned. I mean, he's cultivating a large subscription base, regularly doing Substack Lives. I don't have the time. I'm doing too many other things to spend that level of time that Lev is able to. Kudos to him. Michael Cohen also came on when I was on. They said they'd have me back. I'm always up for making some time to cross-pollinate my information to people who are primarily concerned with politics. My lane is psychology, public health, legal issues, societal issues, human rights issues. That's where I'm most comfortable. I was not a political person before I wrote The Cult of Trump, and I've been penalized heavily and censored from the mainstream media because I wrote The Cult of Trump, unfortunately. Still think it's a valid read. If you haven't read it yet, please get a copy or listen to it. If you can't afford it, go to your library. I know I'm hearing that there are waiting lists, but ask them to order more copies. Okay, let's move on. It's Louise Graham. Probably an obvious question, But do you know about the YouTuber Owen Morgan Telltale? Nope, I don't. He uses your bite model when discovering ex-cult Jehovah's Witnesses. Nope. But all I can ask is for anyone listening to this live stream or watching the video, if you see people who are referencing my work, thank them and tell them to contact Center, CENTER, at freedomofmind.com and let us know about it. And we definitely want to encourage more people to teach. I recently talked with a woman who was born in the Moonies, who was doing a book club type thing on the cult of Trump, and asked me if it was okay with me. And I said, I'm delighted. I wish more people created book clubs and got people reading and discussing the important work that we've been involved with here at Freedom of Mind. I'm interested in that MAGA list you mentioned. People need to be made aware that corporate MAGA is funding this regime and they're playing the long game. Yes. So just off the top of my head, the Moonies. And by the way, I just saw a post before we started the live stream that Voice of America, which was defunded and taken off the air, is coming back on air, and OAN is going to be running it. Guess what? It's the Moonies entity, along with the Washington Times. So the Moonies, Scientology, Falun Gong, that publishes the Epoch Times, Opus Dei, the Krishnas, the Science of Identity cult that I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard being a member of. Who else did we talk about being in the cult of Trump? There are multi-level marketing people. Betsy DeVos, who was in the first Trump administration, is Amway, which is a multi-level marketing group. Andrew Tate, trafficking person. So yes, we're going to be working on a list. And if you have a bunch of names, feel free to email us. I have a number of interns and part-time folks that I'm able to pay for their assistance to help me with my messaging, and we're going to keep developing stuff. And I think it's very important to understand that Russia is the puppet master. And these recent things where Trump and Vance are saying negative things about Putin, I think of this as misdirection to try to create the illusion to the GOP Republican senators and congressmen, to give the illusion that they're for Ukraine and that they're not puppets of Putin and the former Soviet Union. Let's see, the lefty, my fellow ex-Mo friend, is borrowing my copy of Combating Cult Mind Control right now. By the way, whenever someone writes combating with two T's, that was the old edition that we put out, and it was released at the same time with a UK edition, and the Brits like combating with two T's. When I bought the rights back and did a substantial update of combating, I made the decision to publish it with one T, as you can see over my shoulder, one T. So double check, because Mormon Stories has the old out-of-date book up, and please tell them to update it. I think I missed the last part of your comment. Can we put that back up? Loved your conversation with John DeLynn. John sat me down. I was sick as a dog. Sat me down for 3.5 hours, 2 days in a row. So Mormon Stories has 7 hours of yours truly, where he just wanted me to tell my life story and so much of how I got into this work. And so if you've got 7 hours and want to hear everything about Steve and the Mormons, go check out those episodes on Mormon Story Podcast. And all I can say is it just empowers me to keep going every time I hear from a former member who says that my work has helped them or helped someone that they care about. It keeps me going to do this work because honestly, it's tiring, but it's also fulfilling. If I know that I'm helping people, I can keep doing this. And what I'm asking for is financial support. If you know any philanthropic foundations that want to give us a grant, I can do so much more. I'm about to celebrate my 49th anniversary of my deprogramming on May 11th from the Moonies cult. So next year will be my 50th anniversary. I'm turning 71 the end of the month. So I'm thinking I got another 10 years in me if I'm safe to keep sharing. And as long as my brain is still sharp, which it's doing good at the moment. So I'm happy to report that. And Angie, I'm still amazed when I hear people say they're 100% MAGA after all the evidence. It's definitely brainwashing. I had a Facebook friend tell me that today. I have to tell you, my experience is when people say they're 100%, they're not. Everybody has doubts, and it's their cult identity speaking. Maybe they think that the group is listening or someone will tattle on them if they share a doubt. But just because people say they're 100% sure doesn't mean it's so. And I have a whole methodology that I teach and I wrote about in the Freedom of Mind book that's based on asking warm, respectful, curious questions, waiting for an answer, really listening to what they say, and asking a follow-up question and a follow-up question. And the way to help people get out of a mind control cult is they need to understand what is mind control. Because I can tell you as a Moonie, I didn't think I was in a cult and I didn't think I was brainwashed. And what helped me was Lifton's 8 criteria of thought reform or brainwashing in his 1961 book. Because as we went through each of the 8 criteria in my deprogramming, it was obvious that the Moonies did each one of these 8. And that's where the door started opening in my mind because I knew the commies were bad. They did brainwashing and still do. And the Chinese government has formal brainwashing programs still. Teaching them about brainwashing, I like my BITE model in addition to Lifton's 8 criteria or Singer's 6 conditions, and asking them questions. Because once they understand what to look out for and what's the measuring stick for what is authoritarian mind control, then they can start deconstructing their process into the MAGA cult. Because people are not born believing Trump is Jesus or the Pope or the greatest man in history. It's Louise. How can you find some hope in these crazy times? Because I believe in the goodness of people. I think 90% or higher of people on earth are good. There's a few psychopaths, there's a few malignant narcissist cult leaders that are sucking up a lot of the air and a lot of the media space. But I think in the end, people are good and they don't like to be lied to. They don't like to be exploited. And they don't like to be oppressed. And I've been saying on my live streams, we former members who have escaped authoritarianism, we are like the white blood cells of the human body for the immune system of humanity to say, this is not good. We should not allow this to happen. And to fight against, when I say fight, I don't mean physical fight, I mean to oppose with active resistance, authoritarianism. Advice for non-cult members, women, disabled, LGBTQ people who are worried sick about this. The best strategy other than worrying. So worrying is about the future, right? It's people have anxiety disorders. They're spending a lot of time worried about a future that isn't here yet. The cure is to identify what's the problem and what can you do about it. Now, everybody has different levels of being able to do something about it. For some people, they can write a postcard. They could go to a peaceful protest. Some people have money and can donate. Some people are creative and can write a song or paint a picture or do a social media video. So, but action is what I recommend, not just sit and fret. So I live in Northampton now. There was just a gay pride parade in downtown, and I went and people were cheering, and it was a love fest. It was really, really cool. There was a whole speech. And one of the points that I thought was very interesting from the stage was they said, pick one thing to work on. There's a million topics, but pick one thing that you really want to focus your energy on and really do a deep dive on that one thing. My one thing is freedom of mind and brainwashing and mind control and cults and helping people. So that's my one thing. And I've been focused on it for 5 decades. And that's perhaps why I'm considered to be one of the top people in the world, because I've really read a lot of books, interviewed a lot of people. I love to learn and want to share my knowledge with society and the world. Bob, I think this MAGA cult's different because they don't need to cut ties to family or isolate in any way. It's sort of an invisible cult. Well, so that's an interesting comment. What I can say is it's not invisible at all. It's all over the place. The red hats are by no means invisible. And what I've been saying to everyone who isn't in the MAGA world, I say you're making a big mistake if you argue, if you call people names for being followers of Trump, by blocking them, by muting them, by not socializing with family and friends because they are believers. And I really believe that love is stronger than mind control. And especially if you have a long-term relationship with a person, they're your brother, sister, aunt, uncle, parent. Over time, if you're patient and don't try to argue logically or factually, you can begin to empower them to reality test. And the 2 areas that are most effective that I've found so far is Chinese communist brainwashing and pimps and traffickers. That most MAGA people will listen if you describe the methods and techniques of mind control used by these 2 entities or networks of people. And the key thing is there are so many people now leaving the cult of Trump. We want to amplify their message, because the more people who are still in the cult of Trump hear people leaving and the reasons why they've left, it's going to create a contagion effect. And I predict there'll be millions of people exiting the cult of Trump in the coming months, not years, months. Let's see, Mikkel, PhotoZ, do you see any layperson training for helping people exit cults happening in the future, e.g. workshops, online training, etc.? Thanks. That's what I want to do. Exactly. And I'd love to role play. I love to do videos of what not to do and what to do. if I can find some ex-MAGA people willing to role play with me, that would be great. And within MAGA, there are many subcults within it. So there's the New Apostolic Reformation folks who were following a person claiming to be a prophet or an apostle, and they were in a mind control cult. People leaving that, that's going to be a different approach than libertarians who are Aspies who follow Musk. Oops, we went dark. What's happening? Up, we're back again. Okay. We went dark for a minute and I lost what was on the screen, Jerry. We're going over the BITE model now. Behavior, information, emotional control. Could you put that question still up again? I think, are cults inherently bad or dangerous, or is it possible for a cult to be misleading, manipulating people for an objectively greater good type reason? So it's a good question, and I think of cults along the entire influence continuum. So I say there are ethical, healthy, productive cults where you have informed consent, respect for your conscience, your authentic identity, asking questions, legitimate leadership that's transparent and knows their boundaries, and the means justify the ends. The unhealthy ones are where the ends justify the means, and these authoritarian cults are the ones that I'm worried about and concerned about. But yes, there can be ethical, cool cults where people are rallying around a person or an idea or a movement, but they're still thinking for themselves, and they have the right to question, they have the right to leave without feeling fear or that they're going to be harassed. Let's see, Ruby, will it ever be possible for those indoctrinated into the Trump cult to be salvaged? Absolutely. Salvaged. I was a Mooney fanatic. I'm telling you, I was as far gone as anyone I've ever met in any cult in 49 years. It took a near fatal van crash, 2 weeks in the hospital, and 5 days of deprogramming that started involuntarily and became voluntary. But I got out, and that's part of my passion, is that my family loved me and made the risk to do something illegal by holding me against my will as an adult, because they knew the real Steve was not acting volitionally. So yes, people can exit mind control cults and go on to live very successful, happy lives, and they're worth the effort. Focused Lady, how do you think cult mind control tactics can be explained as separate from politics? I'm not sure what you mean as separate from politics, because frankly, what I say is that we now know a lot about neuroscience. We know a lot about social psychology. We know a lot about propaganda and disinformation, and there are a reported 5,000 data points on every voting American that's in the dark web that AI can use to manipulate us when we're online. So do I think it can be separated from political things? No, not really. But it's important to know yourself, know your values, and be a thinking person online, and don't do things mindlessly. We switched. I didn't see that last one. If you want to go back one, or if we've covered that, then I'll do this one. Jane the Message, are there general cognitive thinking skills people need to succeed at deconstructing from cults, or to be less vulnerable to begin with, since cults stifle cognitive skills to control people? Absolutely. Yes. Understanding that we have an unconscious and a conscious thinking part of our brain. It's called system 1 and system 2. the Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, learning about unconscious cognitive biases. There's over 200 of them. To have that knowledge makes us wiser, smarter, better consumers. And to learn how to think and how to analyze. And there's been an assault on the scientific method by creationists and by religionists and cultists who are involved with religion. What's the beautiful thing about science is that they don't say there's a truth with a capital T. The scientific method says there's a hypothesis, and we test to see whether or not the hypothesis is giving us tools to better navigate a real world issue or problem. But there's a community of scientists who are called on to test any hypothesis, any theory that is published, and to try to falsify it. So the idea is it's a process, not a single thing, and that we are committed to changing our minds as we have proof. And the people who are walking around saying there's no such thing as facts, and there's such a thing as alternative facts or post truths, I don't buy it. I don't accept that framing. It doesn't make sense to me. We have evolving understandings, and as we develop as a species, we will continue to evolve our understandings. But what we don't want is to devolve and just become like children to some authority figure, parent figure, that's going to tell us what we need to think, what we need to feel, what we need to do, or else we're going to get punished. That's what authoritarian fascists are trying to do right now in the United States, is use fear to get people to self-censor and to kowtow and do and bend the knee to Trump, when in fact we need people to stand up and speak truth to power. That's what needs to happen for our children's sake, our great-grandchildren's sake, our children's, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren's sake, and for the future of planet Earth. So, how do we combat the communist mind control taking place on the far left? Naming it. Naming it is identifying it. Use the Lifton 8 criteria from 1961. Use the BITE model. What people need to understand is we're in psychological warfare. And the left has been infiltrated, the right has been infiltrated. It's not just the right. And when people say, how come you don't say more about the left? It's like, communist China is the left. 1.5 billion people, the second biggest economy in the world. It's a mind control cult. BITE, check it out. Their influence is now showing up engaging in those. TikTok is owned by China. Duh. Do you not understand that? They have an agenda. They want their ideas to win, and they want to take down the United States as the greatest power that can undermine their desire to take over Taiwan, for example. And by withdrawing the U.S. from USAID, guess who it's empowering? Communist China to come in, to develop relationships, give vaccinations, give food to starving people. That's what Trump is doing, empowering China to have more power on planet Earth. And if you don't like that, then you need to be saying that to the Trump administration. Jacqueline, the cult is Biden. Is that the same as the cult of Trump? Why not? Please study my work. And one of the cults that I put in chapter 7 of the cult of Trump is called the family. Now, my former cult was called the family. The Children of God cult was called the family. But this family does the national prayer breakfasts. Jeffrey Charlotte wrote 2 best-selling books on the topic, and there's a 5-part Netflix series called The Family. I recommend you watch it to answer your question, Jacqueline. And you will understand this is a cult that recruited Democrats and Republicans. Yes, Democrats and Republicans. So why do we have such a corrupt political situation in the United States of America? Because both parties have been empowered through the Supreme Court hack by Opus Dei to give dark money to say corporations are equal to humans, to give dark money, and politicians are doing the bidding of their funders, this and not doing what their constituents want. The whole system has been corrupted. So do we want to go back to a corrupt system? No. We need to have a vision for the future that's based on rule of law, Constitution, separation of powers, due process, all these great ideas, but we need to put the regulations back in place that were taken down by Clinton and the GOP since Reagan. They've been systematically dissembling the checks and balances of power in the United States government. These are all my opinions. I'm open to being challenged and changing my mind if there's proof. Let's see. Callisberg on TikTok asks, have you ever heard of the group Leaving MAGA? Yes, I have. It was started by Rich Logis. I interviewed Rich Logis, and you can watch that interview on my YouTube channel, Dr. Stephen Hassan, or look at my Substack. And I've interviewed Pam Hemphill as well. She was arrested at January 6th. And Rich didn't want to continue associating with me. I guess he feels the Cult of Trump book is a negative for people to join Leaving MAGA. I don't see it that way at all. But yes, I have heard of the group, and he's on the Midas Touch network, I believe, as my audio podcast is. Let's see, Ruby. So do people have to be willing to have evolving understanding or a willingness to consider in order to be salvaged? I don't believe so, but every case is different. And understanding who the person was before they got recruited into believing in Trump and MAGA will give you an indication of what you have to amplify and elevate or ignore. When people tell me, Steve, before MAGA, I was a criminal and I was beaten and tortured and was an alcoholic, as a trained mental health professional, I don't want them to go back to that identity. I want them to think of a future self that they want to evolve into. If someone was Phi Beta Kappa and the president of their graduating class and are MAGA, I do want them to go back to remember what were the values that they were operating off of and such. But in the end, you can accuse me of being an idealist and wanting to maintain hope and wanting to empower more people to don't give up. And we are stronger together. I know that's a Biden phrase. We are stronger together, but I like that phrase because we are stronger together. And there are major fissures in the Republicans and the base of MAGA. I didn't realize it, but I'm over my hour. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And come check out my YouTube channel, my Substack, my podcast, Cult Conversations. And thanks to my team who helped me today. Take care.